Hi, this is John Rule, and I have another example for you, this time at the suggestion of a Reaper user. It was suggested that we communicate with the Reaper web server and translate that to Midi commands. So here I have an example that does just that, and I will go into just the operation of the communication right now. First we get our device, and I have Maple Midi virtual ports installed, which I'll use. We use an output port, and once we have our device name in this field, that's all we need. So we can save this project with that name, and then the Midi send buttons can use that. That's what these are. Each row corresponds to a command. This is play, stop, record, and then we have an editable field where you can change the string. Right now we have track 1 _ mute, and we can change that to solo or ARM and then any track number that we want. But right now we're going to be listening for a track 1 mute command, mute on command, and that will send a MIDI CC all notes off, and we set that CC value by clicking on the CC field, and a list will come up, and we can select what CC value we want. I also have some non-CC values like program change, which is also selected at the bottom of the list. And then I do have a note on off. So you select each field when you want to change the command, and the corresponding channel for each row, and a value. The values are already set up for you, so all you need to do is trigger these. You can actually test them by sending once you have your device name. But let's go ahead and start our loop, and that is started by pressing the loop button. And once we press our loop button, you'll see the HTTP data pouring in, or you should. The HTTP server, the RTE server, is started when you press the loop button. And this is a toggle button, so you can pause it and then restart it if you want to. But right now, we're just interested in seeing what it does. So when I press a track 1 mute, it should trigger this button right here with an all notes off. And we can look at that from the RTE using the Midi monitor. And the Midi monitor is the data monitor, I'm sorry. Midi monitor is Midi OX is a very good Midi monitor. The data monitor, the RTE data monitor, is a very good data monitor for the RTE, and we can view incoming and outgoing data right here. So let's go ahead and we can do a test right here by just pressing a button just to make sure we have communication, and we have Maple Midi out. That looks good. So when we see a trigger happen, we will see data on that first line. So let's go ahead and press the track 1 mute, and the track 1 mute did trigger this send button right here. So that's the way it works. It works by triggering an event trigger, and I will take you into more detail about how that works in the scripting a little bit later. But I just wanted to show you how to just get this operational right now, where you can just trigger. Let's go ahead and trigger a play, and a play will trigger a program change, and stop will send another, we'll send a note on, we'll send channel volume. And now when I press record, let's arm our track. Let's go ahead and change this to ARM so we can watch that activate. And that did activate. Let's go ahead and press record. And record sends another trigger. And stop sends another trigger. Note on, note off. So I just wanted to show you what this is and what it does, what it looks like, how it operates. And in the next section, I'll take you into what the scripting is and how you can change some things. So now I'll take you into the scripting a little bit more. Let's go right into the loop script. Hide some of these other windows. And I can hold the Alt key down and not trigger a script, just to refresh the script window. And what we have here is the release script of the loop button. The loop button is actually doing a few things. There's script in the push, release, and it's calling itself in the loop script. And this is where all of the parsing is done to look for the keywords of transport and track and the play, the transport status. So what we're doing here, this entire script is parsing, it's getting the HTTP buffer and then using a couple of functions to parse. And when we find what we're looking for, we actually send a push or an event to an object. And what we're doing for the play, is we are sending a do release to button transmit or xmit 1. And that button is right here. So the script for that is in the release. We're sending a do release. And when that happens, we are filling in all of the variables for the Midi TX. We're actually pulling in a custom property from the CC field. We're pulling in data 1 and data 2 values, and we're getting the channel, and we're getting our device, our Midi device, which is Maple Midi out port 1. And then we're checking on the mode to see what we want to do, if we're going to use a note on off, or if we're going to do a program change, or default is a regular CC command. And then in each one of those, we have a Midi TX command. And so depending on the logic, the Midi TX, the data is compiled slightly different than in certain modes. So you don't have to do it this way. You can have a fixed string if you want the port. If you know the name, you just type the name in a string, Maple Midi port, whatever. Your data variables, your channel, you just put channel 1. Or actually Midi is -1, so it would have to be channel 0. And then your mode for CC is 176. Program change is 192. And a lot of that information is in the help. And you can see by example, going into the scripts of some of these buttons, every button is practically the same script, except for the at the top, we're getting different field values. So for each button, each row corresponds to the button. So button 1 is Midi channel 1, and button 2 is channel 2, 3, 4, etc. So we're pulling values from the rows of objects, and for the CC fields, we are pulling not only values, but we're pulling embedded values that are in the custom properties. And the custom properties are set by selecting an item from the list, and in the object properties, you can go to the info tab and you can check on these custom properties by clicking on the whatever variables, whatever custom properties are there, and you can check the contents of that variable. So here we have a CC 128, which I believe is all notes off. And then we have, let's see. No, that's note on off. That's a custom. That's my property. So it's 0 to 127, 128. So I tagged on some of these custom properties here. Program change would be, I just gave it a value of 130. But the mode is important, 192. Channel volume is typical CC number 7, and the mode is 176. So those are the values that are plugged into the MIDI. So each MIDI button actually has the same code, and just the variables, the field names are changed, and the channel and the value names are changed. So this code is pretty reusable. Also, at the bottom of each script for the MIDI buttons, I have 3 strings that you can use. One is a regular send string, which is a network socket string, and you can just send any data to any device on the network that can open a socket. So you can use that at the same time you're using MIDI. You can also use a send datagram, which is a UDP or connectionless protocol, and you can send any data to any device again that can communicate in that fashion, or you can also use OSC, which is Open Sound Control, and this is a specially formatted string that is sent as an OSC type of command to applications like Reactor, Native Instruments Reactor, or Plug Bajul is very good at using OSC. So you can do many things through an event trigger. You don't have to do just MIDI. This is an example that does MIDI because it was requested, and I thought it was a good idea. And that is how this logic works and how this editor works. For this example, there is also another example that uses OSC, and that is called a MIDI to OSC control, and I have a video on that as well. So this is an example that sort of does the opposite. It takes incoming MIDI and sends OSC commands. So you could look at that as well. This uses the OSC protocol. And there is also a MIDI workshop that does a lot of MIDI, MIDI CC, and some note on, note off stuff. So this is something that you could find very useful as well.